I want us to move on now and talk about change. You're going to live it every day. And a question I've got for you to start you off with is, how do you adapt to change? Don't have to share out loud, but just think to yourself, how do you adapt to change? What's your reaction? Are you always positive? Sometimes are you negative? And if you're negative, why is that? Is it you don't understand it? You don't agree with it? Those are two completely different things. And so in the next hour, we're going to talk about those topics in a little bit more detail. But I want you to think about yourself first. And before we get started talking about change, I'd like you to focus on your organization and talk in your tables about what are 3 behaviors we want every employee to demonstrate. So what are you looking for in your employee? Not that they understand customer service. No, that's not specific enough. What does that mean? Giving eye contact to everybody that comes in. Answering your phone on 3 rings. Answering your voicemail. Because some of your employees, check them out, they're never checking that voicemail because they don't have voicemail at home. So in the workplace, they're not using that. So I want to know 3 behaviors in your organization that you are expecting from everyone, whether you're the owner, whether you're the receptionist. These are called core competencies. That's what these mean, core competencies. Everyone has to display them. Okay, quick conversation, and then we'll get talking about change because I'm going to come back to this. And what do you mean by good attitude? Does that mean that they're always agreeing with what you say? Oh. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's in the delivery. Yeah. So be careful when you just have vague terms like good, because you want to be, because he, particularly because he's from another country, may not know what that means. So you want to make sure that everyone in the organization understands. So what does that mean? So one word I don't know.
So with training comes responsibility, right?
I'd like to give you one thing to think about. Are you encouraging cross-functional knowledge? So if your accounting team isn't going to be there for a day, is there anyone that can do the very basics? If your receptionist is away, is there anyone that can go do that job? That's cross-functional. So if your company, if your vision, if your mission says we all work together, well, you're not being truthful if everyone has their own niche and doesn't know what anybody else is doing. That's not working together. That's working in isolation. That's working in silos. So be thinking about the cross-functional piece. Because sometimes people don't even realize they're interested in something in your organization until they get to try it. Likewise with you. How do you keep yourself rejuvenated? Because you're setting the tone. If you're a manager, you're setting the tone. You walk in like this. When an employee comes to you and you are on your laptop, not really looking at them, what are you saying to them? You're not really important. So that's the cross-functional thing that you might want to, you know what? Everybody in this organization has got to give attention to whoever is speaking to them. And what does attention mean? That's something you can decide. But you might want to think about that. And if I'm younger, how many times a day can I look at my phone? because they're used to. It's attached to their hand. All right? Whether you like it or not, it's attached to their hand. So can they look at it anytime, all day? Maybe. In your organization, they can. But in other organizations, if it's a safety related, no. Or if you're driving, if you've got drivers in your organization, are they allowed to look at their phone while they are driving? What are you thinking about that? So again, just maybe something for you to ponder. Yeah.
You're working,
yes.
And you say you have to have attention to them. What if it's so much? It's like they're not considering that I'm actually in.
That's okay. Yeah. Can you hang on? Can I come and get you in 10 minutes and I'll be right with you? I just have to finish this. That's all right. They don't always have to, you don't drop everything for them. Don't misunderstand me. Not at all. They've got to appreciate what you are doing, but just indicate that I'll come back to you. Let me come back to you when I've got time. Now, don't wait for 4 days because that's giving the wrong impression as well. Okay, so it wasn't really all that important, was it? Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a thinker. Ponder. No. Yeah. And do you ever ask your boss, how do you want me to present material to you? Or bosses, owners, do you ever say, this is how I think? So when you come and see me, can you give me 4 metrics and can you tell me what your recommendation is? I'll go away and think about it and then I'll come back and talk to you in 2 days' time. It happens both ways. All right, employees, you got to have comfort level in asking, but also manager, you've got to tell people how you think because we all think differently. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 And those of you that like to feel important because everybody runs into my office. Look at all the people that come in here. Wow, I'm busy, I'm important. Is that really what it is? Or do you enable them to come in there? So HR, watch that. You are not a counselor. You don't have the skill set unless you've got a degree, all right? Don't put yourself there. There's lots of resources in Lethbridge that you can be sending your people to if they need the assistance. Go away and do some research and come back and help them with this is where you need to go. So don't just have an open door policy where people can come in and talk for 5 minutes, 20 minutes every single day. That's not what you want. That's not performance. You need to break that. You are enabling them. You're enabling them. What do you say to them? Great question. We're going to do a little exercise on that to do with change. Yeah. It is an open door policy. It's just redirecting what happens. Yeah, yeah. How do you get a pulse on it?
I put my desk, I put all of these things because from HR, it gets people comfortable talking to me and in my door because I love them.
Mm-hmm. But don't you need to get work done sometimes? So maybe that's not you. Yeah, maybe that's not you. Maybe you don't want them. Candy in your office, go for it. If that's you, then for sure. And if that's a way to bring them into your office, but you can also go to them. Do you get out of your office and walk to where they are? So what's going on today? What are you doing? Teach me. All right. Now, don't always be hovering. He's new, so I'm always going to check him out because I'm not so sure he knows what he's doing. All right. Like, how did you get this number? That's not what you're doing. That's micromanaging. All right. But it is, in fact, getting a connection with your employees. So to find out what people are doing, we've got 2 eyes and we've got 1 mouth. Use your eyes to watch what's going on by getting out with your people. You got 2 ears as well, so listen to your people. Really don't just think, when someone comes to you and says, I'm stressed, where does your mind go? You immediately start to think about, how do I help them? Find out what's causing their stress, because a lot of your staff is stressed because of home. And we're past the stage in our working career where you say, leave your home life at the door. Mm-mm. Yep. Yep. That doesn't work. Okay? Don't be saying to people, what goes on at home stays at home. No, it doesn't. It stays with them for the rest of the day. That's people. Yeah, we are people. We're not the table. And so therefore, you have to teach people how to adapt to what's going on at home. And guess what? When they've had a bad day at the office, do you not think that goes home? Don't you think the spouses are tired of hearing about blah, 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 blah? Because that's what goes on. It doesn't stay in the office, it comes home. So it intermingles. So you want to be thinking about these particular things. So again, have a quick discussion about behaviors you're watching for. Not that you want people to work hard. It's not what I mean. I want people to be able to tell me at the end of the day the 2 things they've done. That's a behavior. Or I want to see that you actually like being here. Once in a while, there's a smile on your face. Once in a while, there's some energy. A lot of your organizations, some of your people are very low energy. They're draining. They don't want to be there. It could be their personality. You need to tweak that passion. Where is that passion? Get down to that belly and figure out what it is that makes you tick and why this is a good place for you. So again, quick conversation. I'll get your question in just a sec, okay? So away you go. Just another minute or two. What are the behaviors we're looking for in our people?
They're so full of life and conversations and stuff are happening.
Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna comment, like it comes down to that HR person defining their scope and their role and communicating that, setting those expectations ahead of time, right? Like I think I do that really well. Well, that's the comment that I get, right? Is that people know that I'm there to help you find the solution, but I'm there to help you,
Yes.
not find it for
Exactly,
you.
exactly. The other thing is that HR influences. You don't have people reporting to you. You have to influence people. That means you really need to get to know them. Different than a manager.
Yeah.
It's a whole different thing. Then you need to do both. Need to do both. Need to do both. Okay, how are we doing? Do you want to share any behaviors that you are looking for in your organization? Or if this is the first time you've had the conversation, continue it. This is what we really are looking for. And then tell your people, this is what we want to see in you. All right? I'll give you an example. When I'm teaching at Bow Valley College at 8 o'clock class, I have 40 people who come in with pretty low energy. All right? It's my job to pick that up and to get them engaged and to tell them, this is what I want to look like. I want you to bring a pen, paper, and your brain. Okay? I tell them that because that's what I'm looking for. Then leave the rest to me. But when you come in and you just sit and look, there's no pen, there's no paper, it doesn't look like you're ready. So I have an expectation of you, and then leave it to me and I'll work on the other piece. But those are the behaviors. That's what I mean. Tell people what you're looking for. If you're looking for something and they do it. Charlie, remember we were talking about customer service and getting eye contact? Great example this morning. I saw what you did. Tell them what they did. Notice the enthusiasm I used? It wasn't, HR has told me I have to give a positive comment to every employee once a week. Charlie did a great job by showing good eye contact with the customer that came in. It's the delivery as much as what you're saying out of your mouth, okay? So anybody want to share or not? It's up to you. No? Okay, let's get talking about change. Some things that we're going to work through. First of all, what are the types of change that happen in the workplace? We're going to substitute, because a number of you are not in HR. What's your role as a manager or an owner or an HR person when you are influencing the change? How do we go about doing this? And then, how are you going to handle resistance? Every change you bring in, there will be resistance. And you need to think about that. All right, so it's a little different way. It doesn't mean it's negative, but there will be resistance. So in an organization, change happens for many different reasons. Number one, could be the competition is forcing you to change. An example I can give you is that Tim Hortons did something a particular way in their organization, and now McDonald's is having to change because of Tim Hortons. If they want to maintain their competitive rivalry, they've got to change in order to do that. Sometimes your customers will demand it. So if you were in a retail store right now, the customers don't necessarily want to come into the store. They want to do some online shopping. Well, you've got to be thinking about that if you're large enough. So that's an example of your customers driving the change. Third, there's always legislation. And if you don't have any HR person in your organization, you better be getting some of those online publications to you about amendments to employment laws so that you are practicing what you should be. To do with health and safety that came in the spring, you've got to have either a joint health and safety committee or you've got to have a representative in your organization. It depends how large you are. You've got to have one or the other. And that was effective in June. So if you haven't started on that, you want to be thinking about it. So at least you can prove if an auditor comes in, we're working on it. Because if you don't, you're not able to prove it, it's going to cost you. It could be organizational change. So, we've discovered that we don't need 2 vice presidents. We only need 1. We don't need a finance and a business development department. We only need 1. It's internal organization will cause change. It could be the geographic area you live in. So Calgary has not come out of the recession that everybody is saying. Trust me. I work with these people all the time. It's the market that we are in. We are still struggling with the economy. So therefore, we've got to be mindful that we've got to make some changes because of that. Those are all examples of the types of change that can occur. Every one of those will have an effect in your workplace. Okay? Which, again, are you hoping to survive in your organization? Do you want to make it profitable? Do you want to bring your employee performance up? And do you want to increase the customer service level to your organization? And when I say customer, I mean internal and external. Because if you've got your teams fighting, things are not productive in your organization. So the customers are both internal and external. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is you want to think, what is the need for this change? Why? The most important question you can ask is, why are we making the change? Don't change just for the sake of change. Is it appropriate for your organization? So just in your teams, can you tell them one change that you are starting to think about or you're working on right now? One change. Could be minor. Could be we're just changing a process. Rather than 2 signatures, we only want 1. Don't think any change is not important. It depends on the complexity of the change. But what's one change that you're working on or you hope to work on within the next month? So I want you to focus on 1. Away you go.
For me, one change is taking See, if you haven't said anything negative, then if that change ever needs to happen, then you are our stuff. Another thing I think is sometimes training
Just another minute, and I hope you'll have one change in mind. Okay. Have you got a change in mind? Have I given everybody enough time to have at least one change? Because I'd like you to keep coming back to that change as we talk through each section of this PowerPoint presentation. Yes? Everybody's got one change? Okay. Just going to give you a piece of content. There's 3 types of changes that can happen in your organization. One change is everybody in the organization is going to be affected. Every single person. That's called a transformational change. Depending on the type of change will dictate how you have to communicate it and how you've got to drive it. So transformational, everybody's going to feel it. Okay. The next one in the middle is called transitional change. So maybe we've got a policy that we're going to stop doing and we're going to create a new one. And it could be to everybody in the organization, but it could also just be within a department. And it's called transitional. And a minor change. So maybe this might affect only the people in the organization that fill a particular role. So maybe the accountants will all have to change, I don't know, maybe how they process payroll or something. But it really, in the long run, doesn't affect anyone else. It's called tangential. Tangential. T-A-N-G-E-N-T-I-A-L. Tangential. So there's 3 different. Any change that occurs in your organization will fall into one of those. So depending on the type of change that it is, we need to be asking ourselves 4 questions. When change doesn't work, it's usually that it hasn't been planned for. You haven't thought through how are we going to handle this change. You've just kind of let it take its own course. And my advice to you is to start planning for the change. And you've got to ask yourself some questions. This is where you're getting at that. Does this affect everybody in the organization or just certain departments or maybe just certain roles? So ask the question, who in the organization is going to be affected by this? Ask who the stakeholders are. Don't forget about your external people. So this group here certainly has lots of people that they would hire, as trades, and maybe you folks do back there as well. So they'd hire different organizations to work with them. They're stakeholders if a change is coming across the whole organization. Your customers might be a stakeholder group as well. Don't forget, ask the question, who's involved with this change? And third is, how do we get people convinced that they need to make the change? If it's legislated, it's easy. We're going to have to pay you $15 an hour now, full stop. However, if it's another type of change, it's because of the market, it's because of the customer, it's because of an organizational restructuring that we're doing, We then have to motivate our employees to keep up the change. And there's ways that you can do that. I'm going to give you some ideas of what that might look like. And include the people as well as the management in the change. Don't ever think that only one person in the organization is going to drive every change. It's not your HR team that drives change. It's not the owner that drives the change. It's people in your organization that are going to drive it. What you want to do is, if you're making a change, you want to sustain it. And that's where a number of organizations fall down. They bring in lots of change, but have you noticed after a year, it dies? It's that sustaining piece that people have trouble with. In reality, in the workplace of today, be careful you don't have too much change, because it gets confusing for people as to what all are we doing. Every time we see you come here, you're giving us something different to think about. So kind of organize, slow down the change that you're bringing in. Okay? So I'd like to talk a little bit about how do we initiate the change. This is really important. This is your first impression of the change that's going to happen. Who in your organization is delivering the message? Should it be the president? If it's a finance change, you better have it be whoever is in charge of finance. Whoever in the senior team has a vested interest from a business perspective, they need to be involved in the change. You need to be including them in the conversation, because the people are watching. If the VP of operations doesn't seem to be very interested in this change, and it is in fact in the operations business, they will start to step back and think, maybe the senior management doesn't think this is a great idea. This is just Charlie's idea. So to get away with some of that confusion, you need to have what's called a sponsor. A sponsor is someone at the senior level who will support the idea. It is in their particular business scope. So ensure you've got a senior player involved in some way. You also then want to have what's called change agents. So these are people, these are the employees in the organization who are going to be involved in the change. And you can select those people, or they can be bubbled up from within the organization. They can come to you and say, is there any way I can help with this change? I like it. It's good. How can I help? Or it can be you going and deciding, I think we need to have somebody in our office in, what was one location? Westlock. Okay. We need to have one person in Westlock who's going to be on the ground driving this change. How do you select who's a good change agent? I think there's 4 core things. 1, they've got to be positive. Don't ever select a change agent who has this frown on their face and this, woe is me. That's never going to work when you're trying to implement change. Number 2, that they believe in the change. Don't try and get somebody to get others interested if you know in your heart that those people don't agree with this particular change. Ask them, what do you think if we brought this into the organization? If they say to you, I totally disagree, don't be asking them to be a change agent. Number 3, what's important is that they can communicate, that they can talk to employees, but they can also talk to the senior players. They might even have to talk to some customers. It depends what the change is. And number 4 is that they have good communication skills and that they listen. They will be able to come back to you and say, listen, we've got a problem arising. There's some discontent with something that we've done. They will be your eyes and your ears. And so that's why communication is important. Okay? When you are bringing change into your organization, you've got to do some homework before you bring it in. So if in fact you're hearing that there are 6 generations in the workplace, do some research, go online. There's lots of resources out there that talk to you about how to get those different generations connecting with each other, communicating with each other. There's lots of information about what the values of people are in those various generations. And it'll help get you more educated. So it's the research piece. And if in fact you don't have time to do the research, get one of your assistants, analysts, to do that research, whatever position you've got there, get them to do the research for you so that you can be looking and feeling about what's going on out there about this particular change. Number 2 is social media is there, use it. What are people saying about the change that's happening? And then also, what's happening in your business environment? Never lose sight of what your business is all about. So right now, I want you to work in your group. You had a change in mind. Assume that you haven't started to talk about this. So it's the first time that you are talking to your people about this change. Question number 1, who's going to deliver that message to your people? Who should deliver that message? And number 2, what are you going to say to them? What are you going to say to people when you're bringing a change into the organization? So, where you go. Quick discussion, and then we'll talk.
I would feel bringing change.
You're going to talk to yourself. Self.
Sound that's right in the
Do you have to be concerned about cannabis?
Do we have to be concerned?
You have.
Like to not talk about it here? Yes, you should.
Yeah. And
Or
what
no,
are you
how do you
doing?
go?
And how are you doing with
mean
it?
that the people are
Yes.
men would be
Yes.
using-
Yeah.
It is definitely something that we're going to have to keep in mind.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we're lucky right now. We're not. Right now, we don't. You know, we're borderline where that's going to become a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, so far we're okay.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean a year from now.
No, that's right. Because you have a lot of safety-related positions. So I would imagine, yeah, you better be thinking about what are we going to do about this? And then how do you know if someone is?
Well, and that's
Yeah.
the challenge, right?
Yeah.
Because you know, like we up until now, we've had staff that we had no question.
Right.
We were safe, right?
Yeah.
But that has changed
Mm-hmm.
because now all of a sudden we were like, okay, I don't know this person.
Mhm.
I sense
Mhm.
that this is a person that potential.
Yeah.
Right? And so now all of a sudden that changes. And
Yes.
you have guys coming in on a certain day, and you know that it was either alcohol or
Yep.
something else.
Mhm.
That makes them look
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And what are you going to do if they operate a piece of equipment and they hurt someone else, another one of your employees? You know, that's it's 3 things. How do you know when someone's, because the characteristics are all different. Number 2, we don't have a standard like alcohol. If you blow over, you're intoxicated. If you blow under, supposedly you can carry on if it's not a safety-related position. But we don't have that. And then thirdly is, what are we going to do about it in our organization? Because if I do it on Saturday, it still might be in my body. It doesn't leave me before Monday. Yeah, so you need to, I just caution you and having discussion at your senior level about it. Do you understand? Marijuana? Marijuana? Yeah. It's now become legal. You're allowed to have 4 plants in your basement now.
Tell them. He's a farmer.
Okay, had conversation about who is going to deliver the message and what you're going to say. Does it always have to be HR that delivers this? No. HR, you don't always have to roll out every change there is. People get tired of hearing from you, HR, if you're always coming with the changes. So encourage others in your organization to roll these out. What's really important is also this networking, is that you, in fact, should have a core of people that you can call. Maybe they're the same level of you as you, but in different, maybe in your competition. Maybe they belong to a professional association. Who knows? That's who your network is. I use my network a lot. And what's big right now, and I was talking to these folks about it, is cannabis. Okay, it's a really gray area. We don't have all the facts, but too bad, it's legal. Here we go. What are we doing about it? And so you need to get talking to people just to get conversation going. You can't figure this out on your own in isolation. And if you've got safety sensitive positions, you really have to focus on it. That long haul truck driver, all right, that person operating the forklift in the ranching industry for sure. Now, you may know all of your staff really well, so you know that it's not an issue. But you need to get talking to people. This is a big, big change. You can't plead ignorance when, in fact, an incident happens. That's too late. That's water under the bridge at that point. So you need to get talking in your leadership team just about this. What happens when? What are you going to do when your first employee comes to you and they've got a medical certificate that says they're allowed to have marijuana? Now, how are you going to cope with that? What can you do? There's lots of things you can do. If you can look at other, if they're doing a safety sensitive position, you better be looking at other opportunities in your workplace. Yeah, better be looking at other opportunities. Don't be continuing to have them in that safety sensitive position because there's too much vagueness. First of all, how do you know if someone is under the influence of marijuana? Number two, when does it leave your system? Because you did it Saturday morning, is it gone by the time you come to work Monday? Nope. Not. How often do you do it? What's your size? What's your metabolism? Hey, we weren't given all that information when this all rolled that out. No, I wouldn't panic about it, but it's things that you need to be thinking about. We haven't been given the tools to be able to do this. But if you have a safety sensitive position, you better be watching and observing what your people are doing, how they're acting. And be careful of those employees that come to you and say, I know in Calgary, we've got 3 or 4 medical practitioners who we know write prescriptions for medical marijuana for any reason. It doesn't matter what it is. They're well known among the HR community. So when you see that coming, you think, here we go. Now what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this?
Yeah, and actually, that was the interesting thing with the cannabis is that was a change that I got, asked to implement like right pretty much when I started. It was like a couple weeks before legalization, and I did a lot of research into it, and where a lot of and there was a lot of lack of information and a lack of planning when all this came through. But I think where a lot of it really went was that the importance of focusing on the core issue, which is being able to do your job safely, and that can be changed by a number of factors besides marijuana. And that's kind of the direction we went, because it's like, well, so-and-so, is thinking they can smoke a joint on their break. Yeah, that's a problem. But also Ted, who's been working here 30 years and his back hurts, he's popping Percocets all day.
Yes.
And so that's why it's not really enough to say, yeah, no, we just don't want cannabis here. No, we need to really revisit the whole safety issue of our company and how we communicate to our employees. Like, hey, if you've got an issue, we've got this process that we can sit down with your manager and say, you know what, if your doctor says you need to take this and it might affect your job, we've already got a system in place that we can investigate this and go forward. And so that's kind of where we had to go. And it's very, and like in this area, it's a very traditional conservative area. And I think it's very much like, well, everyone should know that they just shouldn't do that. And I'm like, yeah, a lot of people should, but it comes more than just saying, yeah, don't do this or don't do that.
Yeah, it's going to happen in every industry if it's not happening already. So all I'm saying to you is just think about it, have conversation about it. And if you've got safety sensitive positions, just start watching and thinking about those areas, because you don't ever want to be liable if they were found under the influence working for you, particularly, for example, a truck driver who runs into someone and kills them. That could take your company down. Yeah, the lawsuit, for sure. So you want to just be aware that this is, and it's grayness, and we don't like being in gray. I understand that. But you do need to have conversations. So HR, you should be talking to your leadership team. Leadership team, don't stop work trying to figure this out, but have the conversation about, what do we think about this? Where are our viewpoints? And if you've got a staff who's been with you for a long time, you know they don't indulge in it, well then fine. But you might have a new staff member come in and you might not know that staff member. Then things change. So it's a whole new field we've opened up for ourselves here, I think. Okay, so let's have a look here at a couple of things. When we're looking at what needs to be changed in the organization, a couple of points I'd like you to think about. What's the purpose? Why are we doing this? Change for the sake of change? Don't do it. Change because there's a need in our organization to make it more profitable, increase efficiency, then for sure, go ahead and do it. But it also requires some planning. How long before we can actually roll this out? How should we do this? Who should be talking? And then how do we talk to our people? Because remember, when you call people together for one meeting and you have conversation, there will be many different understandings of what was discussed at that meeting. They will walk away. You'll think everybody here heard the message that I gave. This is what it is. Lo and behold, they're walking out of there and they are understanding and thinking different things. So you've got to think about different ways to communicate with your staff. So if you're having meetings, town hall meetings, everyone attends because it affects everyone. Are you also having those same meetings in the department? Are you also sending information out through intranet? Are you also posting? Because you might have people that have English as a second, third, fourth, fifth language. So they may have to view something graphically before they understand what in fact you're saying. Okay, so give some thought to how in fact you're going to get the information and the change out. How do we do this? Think about your culture. You've got a change in mind. What kind of culture do you have in your organization? And when I say culture, how does your organization feel? What's the personality of your organization? Are people encouraged to ask questions, to come up with ideas, innovation? Or is it an organization where the management team directs what happens in the organization? One's not right or wrong, it's just your business that you are in and what type of a culture. Secondly, do you encourage people to talk to each other if they are outside of a team? So are you encouraging this cross-conversation? Can you have the water cooler talks, or would you prefer that not happen? That's another piece of culture. Third is there a dress code? There may or may not be. And fourth, what happens when people make mistakes? That's all part of culture. Are they allowed to make a mistake, or do they get fired the first time they make a mistake? So chat among yourselves. What's the culture like? And then based on that culture, how can we bring this change in, but have it received positively? Okay, so two things. What's the culture like in your organization? Never forget about that culture. But then how are we going to bring this change in so that it's received positively? So have conversation and we'll chat about this after. What's your culture like? Sorry? Oh, a minute, maybe? Maybe 2 minutes? Do you have any employees? Like, do you have top performers in your whole organization? Everyone is an A player?
I would say there's Kesson probably knows best. He's the one that'll bear
Yeah,
day with
precisely. Yeah.
Cowboys that
Yeah.
we know there are 2 or 3 standouts. There are some that kind of float along.
Yeah.
And there are
There's one or two.
the bottom 2.
Yeah. Have they been there a long time?
We vary from 30 years to 2.5 years.
Oh, really? Wow. Do you ever retire from that business? Oh, you do. Physically, your body tells you it's time to retire? Yeah? Okay. Interesting. How's your culture in your organization?
Just like you said,
Yes.
we've been spending a lot of effort in some areas, and then that's the proper year.
You need to cross-functional communication.
Yeah, the communication, not necessarily tasks.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the understanding.
Yes, and what each person does to have a better appreciation. Never ends, does it? Okay. If I can just ask a couple of you to talk a little bit about your culture that you've got, and maybe how you would launch, how you would introduce this change that you have in your mind into your organization, so it'll be received as positively as possible. And just before you go, I'll tell you about one that I'm working on. I'm working with an organization that we are going to have to lay off 35 people. 35 people. And it's because of the economy, but it's a few other things as well. So that could be very negative. Very negative. And the people that are left can feel really, oh no, what's this going to do to me? Because that's what we think. It's all about me. You know, too bad for you, you lost your job, but I'm stuck here. I got to do all this work now. And so we need to really think about how are we going to share that news with the staff? When are we going to do it? Who's going to do it? All those things have to be talked about. But that's why it's important to think about the culture you have and how you're going to talk for the first time about a change that's happening. So, anyone want to voice what's happening in your organization, what your organization is all about? Maybe what the change is going to be, how you might launch it. We've got a great safe place here. We've got a lot of people that can say, yeah, that's a good idea, or you know what, you might want to think about this.
We kind of strive for excellence.
Okay.
And kind of, we're seeing a problem where out of the employees that we're not getting that excellence from is how long do you go? How far do you push them? How much time and training and respect you give them before they're not reaching that excellence and you've got to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the change that we're seeing is it's how do you say it? They're not maybe the right fit, but you want to give them every opportunity to succeed.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You also, though, have to make a decision because your business has to operate. All right. We didn't say we needed to be friends with everybody in our organization. We have to perform in the organization. We have to treat everybody respectfully, but we don't all have to get along and love each other because that's not what it's all about. That's not why we're in this employment relationship. One thing that I would say to you is you want to think about what your culture is in your organization. Have those people got feedback from you already about you are not meeting our expectation on blah, blah, blah? You're not a good performer. That's not what I'm talking about. You're not doing your reports properly. There's lots of mistakes. You're not meeting deadline. So are you being specific in the feedback that you're giving them? You have to talk to them. You've got to provide them something in writing. Okay, this is the process that you should go through. If you've got that in your culture already, then it's just a matter of making the decision. You've got to make sure that you've given them enough severance, and that's very clear. If you just pay minimum, you've got just go to employment standards, and it'll outline for you there the minimum amount you've got to give in severance. And then you have to think about the way you're going to treat them, but then, okay, they walk out the door. How are you going to bring everybody together? And be very, very careful. Don't be too honest, because you don't know who's a friend of whom, and you don't want to end up in court about all of this. So don't be going to the group to say, we've let Landis go today because she's a problem. She didn't do this and she didn't do that. All right? So she's out of here. Let's move on. Your message is not that. It needs to be professional, but you need to let people know. Another thing you have to do is you've got to let people know that now that Landis isn't here, you are going to do this piece of her work. You're doing this piece of her work because work has to continue. And that's the question that people will have in their mind. So who's doing the work that she used to do? Does that help? Tie your culture piece into thinking about how to make that change happen. And if you've never done a termination before, I'll give you my business card. I've done hundreds of them and haven't been in court yet. So there's something I'm doing right. Happy to have a conversation with you about where, when, what happens. Okay? Can you?
I was going to say maybe there's a place for that employee. Like maybe we can alter their job duties so that they are striving where they're good at and it still benefits the company.
Absolutely.
Because I see that sometimes, like, okay, we hire some person in this role and then they say that they could do all this. And, you know, we did our due diligence in hiring them, but then they get on the job and it's not where they need to be. So maybe there's another spot where we could put them. And even like your D players, right? Maybe there is a spot for them. And so that you can keep just that healthy turnover. Yeah. Right? That 5 to 7% turnover. Yes. Yeah. That's being good open to some other ideas.
Yes. Yeah. Because sometimes the position you hire a person for is really not what they're good at. There might be something else in your organization. And there could be a couple of jobs you could put together and have that individual do that job. You don't have to stick with the same jobs you've always had. Change them up. Keep up with the trends and what's going on in the organization. All right? Anyone else want to talk about their culture and the change that you are thinking about? If not, then some other things for you to consider is create a timeline for the change. And when you're bringing a change into your organization, I suggest you do 4 things. Number 1 is you think about talking that first message, talking to people about why they should be dissatisfied with the way we've done things. So dissatisfied with the status quo. That's the first thing. Second is, this is where we're going. This is the end result. Everyone will receive $15 an hour as of October 1st. That's the end result. That's the vision. Tell people where you're going. Don't keep it a secret. Number 3 is have some steps in mind about how we're going to get there. That's the planning piece. Think about how we're going to get there. And I encourage you to celebrate. We don't celebrate enough in our organizations. And I do not mean it has to be a party with balloons and music and a steak dinner. No, you don't have to do that. Celebrations can be just stopping and saying, we've done really well this week with whatever. We should be proud of this. Might be having food. You'll find that people tend to be more responsive when there's food. Have you ever noticed that? If you have a meeting and you're having food, they'll be there. If you have a meeting and you're not having food, they're going to stay on the job, all right? Because maybe they don't want to go to that meeting. But we have another issue in the workplace. You noticed it? People are gluten intolerant. They're lactose intolerant. They're this intolerant. They're that intolerant. So what are you going to serve? Yeah, water. Great. Thanks a lot. Okay. So it's, yes, exactly, sparkling water. You want to celebrate when you've made milestones in your process of change. And then last, again, I'm going to bring this up. You want to be thinking about the resistance and how you're going to handle it. How are you handling the naysayers? How are you handling the people that are passive aggressive? Yeah, we agree with what you're doing. And behind your back, there's the gossip. Behind your back, they're doing the old way. That's passive aggressive. So you want to be thinking about who those resistors are. So this is all part of the planning. Now we want to actually get some things done. We want to bring the change into be. And I want to start over here first. You have a political environment. Anytime you have more than 2 people, you have politics. Think about your home life. How many people live at home? Unless you're by yourself, there's might be another person there. There's politics. They come into play. No different than your workplace. There's politics there too. How are you going to implement this change based on the politics in the organization? If, in fact, the operations has the most power in your organization, you might want to have a couple more change agents in the operations side of the house because they'll help build momentum. If, in fact, your caretaking staff happens to have more power than anyone else, you might have some change agents there. It's being aware of the politics in your organization. And if you've got a president that your employees don't particularly like, I'm sure that's not the case in here, but you might have a president that's not valued, that's not respected. Minimize the amount of talking they do. Get someone else to do the talking. Maybe they're not a speaker. That's okay. They can have their leadership in other ways. Use them in the appropriate way, though. So politics just means that you are aware of what's going on in your organization. Number 2, it's constant persuasion. HR, it's constant influence. These people don't report to you, but you've got to influence them. It's your opinion, your demeanor that will help people think, okay, this is why this change might work for me. It's being honest with people as well. So if the change is going to cause some problems, you need to say that. So with the 35 people we're laying off, we've got to address that in our conversation with people for the first time. We can't ignore it. It's going to be there. So you have to put it on the table. It's all in the manner in which you use it, though. And remember that you don't just have to talk to somebody once. You've got to do it on a continual basis. And then use your social networks. So encourage people to have conversation about the change. At least they're talking about work rather than what they did last night, rather than the election that happened in Calgary for the no vote. Yeah, so you want to make sure that you are using the networks and the connections of your people. What do we do about sustaining the change? You might have to offer some training. So if it's a new process, for sure you'll have to offer training, but you can't shut the organization down. It's okay to stagger your training. So 5 of you are going to go today, 5 more tomorrow, or 2 are going to go at 9, 2 are going to go at 10. Stagger that training. Don't feel you've got to shut the operation down. Also, get out there and check that your company, your organization, your people are not reverting back to the way it used to be because of comfort. You know yourself, you much prefer to do things that you're comfortable with. Getting you out of your comfort zone makes you uneasy, makes you anxious. So be thinking about, how do we avoid this slipping back? Reward people when they're actually making the change. And then how are we going to measure the feedback that we get? Ask your people, how is the change going? Did it in fact improve your process? Only having one person sign off, does it help? Not having to get 2 people to sign off. Okay. This is a point. These are the 3 reasons that people resist change. They don't like it, they don't understand it, or they don't trust the organization. This is the most serious, and this will take the longest to break down. So HR, you better have a good handle on whether the people actually trust the senior leaders in the organization. Are they really looking after me, or are they only concerned about the bottom line? If you are the CEO, the manager, the partner, do your employees trust you? Stop and think about that, and then go to a couple of trusted people you have in the organization and ask that question. Don't be including that in an employee survey. I trust the president. What do you think you're going to get for an answer? They're going to say yes. You have to do it in other ways, right? Question I want to ask you, have you ever been in an organization when there's been a change and it has not worked? And why has it not worked? What happened? What occurred? Could you throw him what caused the problem?
Well, I think that the organization that I was part of where the change didn't happen is basically management saw what they wanted to do to affect the bottom line, and they didn't ever look at and see if there were maybe logistical or procedural problems with implementing that change.
Mm-hmm.
They just basically got out to the employees and said, okay, you now need to do this. And when we started to do it, it created a lot of issues to where employees were like, well, this is going to make a lot more work and it's not going to allow me to do my job right. And so it just gets dismissed and back burner. And so that's why change, at least in my mind, is something that has to be fully investigated.
Yes.
And I think a lot of homework has to be done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else ever experienced change that did not work? You either stopped doing something or it had the opposite effect or any of those? Yes? Would you like to share? Okay.
I think a couple is realizing you didn't have the support behind it, or that other people didn't share your view. They accommodated it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you keep doing your thing, but that'd be part of it. And I think not communicating that this means they have to start doing something different too. You have the NIMBYism where, yeah, you can make all the changes. Wait a minute, you want to affect my position or that too?
Mm-hmm.
So making sure you go in with that clearly understood.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? You're lucky. If you've never been in an organization where change has failed, you're very lucky. Or else I've been in a lot of organizations where it's failed, so I've just selected the wrong organizations. I'm not sure. But it will happen. And a couple of things for you to be mindful of in regard to resistance. Don't dismiss people that are being resistant, that are not agreeing. Talk to them. Find out what their concerns are. Because quite often, you know what? There's an element of truth in what they're saying. So make sure you engage those people in conversation. Secondly, talk to them about how this change is going to affect them. Because sometimes my resistance is my world is going to change. I don't like change. I don't want to change. Talk to them about their role and what's actually going to be changed and influenced. And sometimes it's the change is happening. Okay, so resistance. HR, this is just a moment for you, and also partners or CEOs. You need to think about self-reflection. How comfortable are you with the change? Because people are watching your body language, they're watching your face, they're listening to your words, they're listening to your tone. So when you're standing up here saying, we're going to make a change, compared to change is happening, and we're going to do it this way. And this is why. It's a whole different thing. But they will watch how you are reacting. HR, for sure, they will watch you. You're there for the people. They will watch how your reaction is. So you want to make sure that you are looking comfortable with the change. So right now, I'm working a lot with the HR folks in that company where we have to lay off 35 people because they're pretty junior. So every day I go there, they know we're laying 35 people off. We haven't told the people that. But I've got to talk to them about their body language. Because people are going to pick up pretty soon that you've got some pretty heavy thoughts going on. You always used to have an open door HR. Now your door is always closed. Those are things that employees pick up. Partners and CEOs, they do that with you as well. They really do watch what you say, how you do things. And so they'll be picking up clues from you. And then you want to talk about it in your team, and you want to make sure and see how your team is reacting. How is our group, how is my team, my department reacting to this change? What can I do in this change to either talk about problems, talk about good things, say, this is what I see happening. Why are you resisting this change? Group, why are you? What are the problems? Let's get this out on the table. Let's have the conversation. Okay? Communication. 3 major topics. 1, when you select your change agents, get them together and have conversation. Ask them what they think. Secondly, share your expertise. You had experience with change, maybe in your life, maybe in your workplace. Share that with people. And then feed that piece into the communication. When you are driving change, it's communicate, communicate, and over-communicate. It's not ever just delivering the message once, because people will not get it if you only talk once. Talk more and different ways of delivering the message. So, what I've done is I've created a case study for you to have a look at. We're not going to actually work through that case study right now because I'm going to give you something else to do, but I want to just draw your attention to the case study. It was behind your photo, what did we call it? Photo release form. So you feel free to take these questions with you after the workshop. If you want to think about bringing change into the organization, go down to where it says Part B in that 2-page document and think about those various questions that are listed there in regard to the change that you want to implement. So we're not going to work through this right now, but this is for you to take away. I would like us all to work on one change in the organization, because I want you just to start talking about this. And the change is going to be this. Everyone in our organization starts with 2 weeks of holiday. It's the minimum, 2 weeks of holiday. We now want to change that so that you will be receiving 3 weeks of vacation after you've been with the organization for 1 year. So you have to prove yourself for 1 year, and then you will get 3 weeks. At your table, talk about who do you think should deliver that message to the people? What is the first way that you're going to talk to individuals about that? So how are you going to communicate with them? And what's your answer going to be to those people that resist the change? Okay? So, where you go, have a conversation, and then we'll talk as a group. Everyone's going to be sharing. Yeah, absolutely. They're having a break. No. Having a break. Why do you say that?
Because getting 3 weeks is a good thing, but not unless the person who just had to wait long.
Or I just got 3 weeks and I've been here 5 years because that was the policy before. So now what are you going to do for me? Because remember, I said to you, it's all about me. So something that's viewed, hey, that should be, everybody should love this.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to share an example with you. You're going to shake your head.
Somewhere near that. In our setting, it's just
In your setting, sorry? Sorry?
see when it comes to the 2 weeks off, right?
Yes.
Like I've always been, you work and I'll, if I'm planning something,
Yeah.
I'll take some time off.
Yeah.
But in my mind, it's not okay. Somewhere in this year, I'm gonna have 2 weeks off.
Yes.
Life happens, and
Yeah.
if it's gonna turn out that I want it, I'll take it. If not, I won't.
You won't take it.
And unfortunately, I think that's how we've operated our company. We've
Yeah.
always been very open to it.
Yeah.
If somebody says, you know what, we want to go somewhere.
Right.
Okay, yeah, do
Go
it,
ahead.
right?
Go ahead.
But because we haven't been as structured.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so for
Yes.
us, it's like,
Yeah. Different way of thinking, isn't it? It is a different way of thinking. And you also have different people in your organization. So the younger people will want that time, whether you think they do or not. They have a different psyche than those of us that have been around for a while.
see, and that's been to us like it's almost been a two-sided thing.
Yeah.
Up to now, we've almost had all people that were just fine with this.
Yes.
Now
Yep.
we have people like, nope, not anymore.
No.
And so again, here we go.
Here we go. Yeah. No, it's going to happen.
It will.
Yeah. And something you think, maybe in your industry it won't be positive, but in a number of them, they thought it was a great idea. So as we talk, you're going to see I'm saying, but what about, but what about, but what about? So anything you think is positive, wait till I tell you about the change we did that caused an uproar. And it was pretty simple. We thought it was pretty easy. It was the planning piece we didn't do. Okay. Are we ready to just have quick conversation? What did you come up with? Folks at the back, you've got the mic. So ideas. What did you come up with? So we have had 2 weeks of vacation, okay, for people. We now are going to, after a year, say that you are given another week. So what do we think? Sounds like a pretty positive change. Everybody should be happy with this change. Pretty simple. What do you think?
Well, we had talked about that, and yes, the first thought is, well, we're giving something to the employees, so everybody should just be ecstatic. We just gave. But then we thought, we've got employees that have been there for 10 years and 15 years. What would be the perception from the longer-term employees? So if we're going to give that benefit of after a year of good service that you get 3 weeks, to see a sense of fairness to company-wide, we have to look at what we would do for those long-term employees. Do they now get 4 weeks, 5 weeks, according to how many years they've been there and the type of employee they are? So It wasn't as clear cut as you would think. Some should have been an exciting moment.
Yeah.
But we would see there'd be problems unless you
Absolutely. Good. Next, anything else you want to add to that?
Kind of thought about that possibility too, and kind of maybe building in something retroactive, whereas for a certain number of years served, you could get a few extra days here, a few extra days there, or maybe pay out a bonus.
Yes.
I mean, I doubt someone, at the end of the day, it could be a moot point. They could just be, oh, I get an extra week of holidays, and they're not going to care. But if they are sour or bitter about what's going on, you could just say, here's a bonus. Thank you for being with the company. And that should solve the problem.
If they're motivated by money. But I might not be motivated by money. There might be other factors going on. So this is that grayness that you need to think about when you think, this is going to be a positive change. That's why I wanted to focus on this, because initially, hey, this is great. This is fantastic. Anything else you wanted to add before we throw the mic over to another group?
We just, the way we would want to present it to the employees as well is we are trying to get better employees in here that will work as a team and make your job that much easier.
Okay, so you're going to try and show them what's in it for them and that we actually care about you.
Yeah.
While you're throwing the mic over to this group here, you also want to think people, you're going to have employees who don't ever want to take holidays because their life is their job. They are who they are because of their job. So they might not want to take vacation. They might never take it. They might slip under the radar. And then when they resign, all of a sudden you owe them 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 14 weeks, 16 weeks. And so you want to be keeping your eye on this piece of the puzzle. Okay? Conversation. What did you have at your table?
We kind
Anything
of got
different?
Sidetracked about the vacation.
Oh, you got sidetracked. That's okay. That's all right.
But I
Sidetracked.
think pretty much
Yeah.
What's been said?
they've covered it.
Okay.
I guess just to expound on it, would it be okay to ask some of these employees to say, we're thinking of doing this. How would you like to be compensated or dealt with or
Dealt with?
dealt with? Maybe that's too strong. How could you feel good about this?
Yeah, careful of the questions you ask because it's opening up a whole new thing. Well, I'd rather not get a week of holiday. I'd rather get 5 courses paid at post-secondary institution. I'd rather get $150 gift certificate at Chapters. I'd rather get, so just be careful of the question you ask because you never know what the people are going to come back to you and say. And if you've got a small organization, be aware of the workload of your people. Don't be having a different policy or package for each of your employees. You can't do that. It's too hard. Your people behind the scenes are worked to death just in the administrative things. And in Canada, we all want to be treated fairly, right? That's what we're known for in Canada. I'm looking over my shoulder to see how you're treating that person. And this one over here, and that one there, and this one here. So don't think that your people aren't comparing themselves. While you're throwing the mic over there, also remember that your people are comparing their salaries. Absolutely, they do that.
And as soon as you tell people they can't talk about their salary, then they talk about it more because they think someone's being treated unfair in the process.
Yeah. Yeah, they will show each other.
Yeah.
If you're still giving pay stubs, sometimes they'll even print the pay stubs. Yeah. And show each other. This is what I get. What do you get? This is what I'm getting paid. What are you getting paid? And then it's the, don't appreciate me. What a crappy company this is. They had to hire you today at this price. I've been here for 5 years and I'm making $2,000 more than he is. So yeah, they talk. Yeah, absolutely they talk. Any other ideas, HR people, about what you do or regarding this change?
I think our thoughts were kind of mutual with everyone.
Mhm.
Discuss kind of with management too what we would want to do with people that have been there for 5 years that have earned that 3 weeks.
Yes.
Because that would definitely kind of be a bit hard to swallow for those people that have been with the company because they can say, oh, well, I might as well go somewhere else.
Right.
And demand 3-4 weeks right off the bat in my contract.
Yeah.
Just be mindful of the change that would happen to the other employees. Kind of similar with minimum wage, right? How many other employees got bumped up if they're already at 15? So.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they explain the why.
Sorry?
It's the explain the why.
Yes.
Why are we?
Yeah. Why are we making this change?
Recruitment, retention.
Yeah.
Why is it?
Yeah. You're working with adults, so they want to know the why. If you were working with children, different thing. But adults want to know the why. So make sure you answer that question for them. Was there any different answers we talked about here? You've got a different culture in your organization. So it's kind of something that they need to maybe think about, but they're not there yet. I'll tell you the change that we were going to bring in. We thought it was a great idea. Tell me what you think about this. We were having a hot summer in Calgary. And so we decided that on Friday afternoon, we'd have the ice cream truck come to our site. It was manufacturing. So they'd drive in, and for the break that people had, they could go get ice cream. Yeah. So in your break, feel free to go out and get ice cream. All right. When we were going to introduce it, the president said, I think we should buy ice cream for them the first time. Sounds good to me. We had a lot of resistance from that idea. A lot of people weren't happy. They said, what happens if we don't like ice cream? What happens if I'm lactose intolerant? What do I get to do for my break? Go outside and socialize. But that wasn't part of the message. The message was, we're going to have ice cream. All right? So it's a pretty simple thing, but it got rolled out in the wrong way. So that's why I'm just telling you, change is hard. Yeah. Okay, so as a wrap up, tell me what you learned from today's session. Anything or nothing? Be honest. Good. I hope. Yeah, now don't go out of here thinking, oh my gosh, I'm never going to sleep again. No, tackle one thing at a time. The intention of this is to just get you thinking about what's out there, what works in our organization, because some of this won't work for you. Okay? What else did you learn? Besides tons. I hope there's something specific that you can tell me.
One thing I don't know if I necessarily learned or whatever, but I'm aware of is I'm in the office with Jeffrey as well. Then, so you often hear the stories of what happened on site, you know, and so you wonder sometimes, like, where's loyalty and where's just simply honor, right? Just honor. Because, you know, culture plays into it a lot. And then that sense of maybe I'm just a number or whatever. I don't know what it all is, right? Well, I've been an employee most of my life. Now we're co-owners, but not that I don't feel like an employee many times.
Yes.
I mean, I know that as an owner, I have more bosses than ever.
Yeah, you do. Everybody's your boss.
But I feel like where's that place of what's happening now in Canada? I think it's transitioning very fast to the employee becoming the one with the authority to really tell you who you are and where to go. You know, so then that leaves you with absolutely no real passion for hiring anybody because you truly know they're being, you know, and it'll probably sound wrong if I say it this way, but they're being equipped and in some cases probably even encouraged to just take this thing to court if it needs to be together. Take your employer and show them who you are. And yet, though they've risked, you know, their life, they've built this company and done what they could to give you employment to provide, you know, promise. And a client will deliver, and we need your hands and feet to deliver, right? So
yeah.
So I guess there's a lot of work on our end just to encourage that loyalty and honor, I guess.
And it's done on a daily basis. You don't just do it once a year. There will always be some of those difficult employees, no matter where you are. And they will take the sail out of your wind. There will be those people. And you try not to personalize it. It's hard, but you try not to. But yeah, it's difficult. It's much harder being in business now with the work people than it was years ago. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? What did you learn? HR people, did you learn anything or not? Because you might not have. You might be up to speed with all of this stuff. Might not have posed a question to you that made you think. Yeah.
Like a lot of it for me, like I have a educational HR background, so like a lot of the stuff that we covered, is familiar from what I really enjoyed how the format, just getting my brain thinking, because I know that with my role I'm learning it, but there's also a couple different hats that I have to wear, and so I really like that this it really got me thinking about the changes that I'm wanting to implement, things that I can do, how I can maybe involve some of the employees, how can I involve with some of the managers, and how that's really going to be key than me just sitting in my office coming up with a policy and then just kind of throwing, memoing it out and saying, hey, read this, and it's very much more than just coming up with something that's legally compliant or covering your butt. It's like we need to find a way that we can truly make this part of our organization.
It has to live in our organization, right? It can't just be a document, and it can't be a policy manual. It's this thick. That's how old companies work. That's not how it is nowadays. You've got to engage those people, involve those people. Any other comments? Well, thank you for your time and for your investment. And if you've got any questions you'd like to ask, now's the time.